What is up, and welcome into Bomber Boys Summer Edition on YouTube Edition and also wherever you get your podcasts edition. I'm Dylan Price with Justin Chevalella as we welcome you into this summer trial as we try to figure out how to do Bomber Boys without the Belisario Media Center and without being together in person, actually being farther than we've ever been during the summer. You coming by way of Sanford, Maine, and me by Charlottesville, Virginia. I don't have the exact miles. Maybe I'll leave that up to you to calculate, but it took me 7 hours to get from New York to Charlottesville. So I'm presuming it's probably about 13 hours apart.
I'm looking it up right now. I'm going to get us this answer. 10 hours and 20 minutes to Charlottesville, Virginia from my current location in Sanford, Maine.
You could get here by tomorrow morning and we could record together, but I won't challenge you to
I
do it.
had
It's
the
fine.
off day today. That's why we're doing this. You should have told me yesterday and then I would have driven down.
I digress. Justin Chevalella from Maine. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm having a blast up here. Second summer being here. The team has won 4 straight, the Sanford Mainers, that being with 3 straight shutouts. And it's a lot of fun to be able to sit up in the broadcast booth day in and day out and just watch baseball because that's obviously one of our two favorite things to do. And how's it going down there in Charlottesville?
It's going great. The Sox are hot right now. So is the Heat. The weather is quite literally atrocious. I think you and I are two people who I love a good warm day. I don't love a good 92-degree day like we had yesterday. It is rough out here.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell I'm in a sweatshirt right now here on this Zoom, but that's because I'm sitting under the air conditioning. It was supposed to reach over 100 degrees with the feels like temperature. I believe capping at 105 feels like temperature this afternoon. And I'm a guy who wants it no hotter than probably 55 degrees.
Yeah, this is I'm not loving it, but I could imagine that this is actually quite literally the hell of Justin Chevalella, the worst case scenario from the weather. But regardless, the Sox are hot just like the weather. They are 11-3 going into the time of this recording. They're on the road tonight. I'm not with the team tonight. Tomorrow on the road with a fellow Penn Stater. Mike Bolger and I are going to be on the scene in Waynesboro for a game with the Generals. So should be really exciting. They've beaten the Generals now 3 times by a combined score of 42-4.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been quite the gap between the Waynesboro Generals and the Charlottesville Tom Sox, but hey, it's anybody's ball game, quite literally. And well, we'll see if the tides can turn because it's not even a full halfway point through the season for us. I assume about the same for you guys, not halfway yet.
Yeah, just past the quarter mark. 13 games into the season, sitting at 8-5. One of, I believe, 4 8-win teams in the NECBL, and somehow third place in our division because 3 of the 8-win teams sit in the North Division of the NECBL. So, I mean, it's been a good start though. I can't complain. 8 wins and 5 losses, and busy road trips to start. 6 of 7 on the road. Now get some time at home. We are on the road tomorrow, but it's the shortest trip we're going to take, and the day off today really helps as well. So we're in full groove now.
So you and I were talking before we decided to do this spur of the moment attempt at Bomber Boys during the summer. Our longest road trip is about 2 hours. Shortest is about half hour, 40 minutes, maybe. How's that for you guys?
The shortest one is tomorrow's road trip at, I just actually checked my map after getting the bus departure time. An hour and 45 minutes is our shortest. And obviously, in a bus, it's going to take a little bit longer. So let's round that up to 2 hours. Our longest can go upwards of 5 hours down to Connecticut.
You
Average, I
enjoy
would
that.
average, I would say 3 hours, 3 hours, 15 minutes.
Fair enough. Hey, we're talking about the New York baseball Yankees, though not the Sanford Mainers, not the Charlottesville Tom Sox today, because for the first time in a few months, you and I have gotten together to talk some Yankees. And while both of our respective summer ball teams are not at the halfway mark just yet, well, neither are the New York Yankees, but they're closing in on it, and they're one of the best teams in baseball. There's a lot to poke holes in, and we will get into that throughout the course of today. And I'm sure Justin Chevalella can poke a few holes in, even if the Yankees were I don't know, 70-0 right now. I'm sure you'd find a way to have something to be a little pessimistic now. But regardless, Yanks do sit at above 50 wins right now. They were the first team to 50 in the majors. They've been pretty hot for the most part, but there are definitely some flaws. So I will tee it up to you. before we get into specifics, what's just the overall vibe of the, at the time of this recording, 51-24 New York Yankees?
Well, I think when we left school, our last Bomber boys back at Belisario Media Center also went over your radio station back at home, if I'm not mistaken. We did that little joint episode. It was me saying, we figured we were going to do this at some point this summer. We just didn't know when. And I said, when we came to this point, I think I said the Yankees would be about 2 games over 500 or just under 500. Um, I am going to laugh. I am going to smile, and I will happily say that's obviously the opposite here as they sit at 51-24, 680 win percentage, the only team in the MLB still over 50 wins. And I mean, it's been what you wanted when you went and traded for Juan Soto, added Alex Verdugo. You finally put pieces around Aaron Judge in the lineup. And after his slow start, we were hitting the panic button, you and I both, back when we were still at school about Aaron Judge. And the minute we left, he just went on this whole rampage of the MLB. His stats are crazy right now. Leads the MLB with 26 home runs as of this recording. And that's the big thing, is that the offense is performing how it should be with Juan Soto, with Aaron Judge. Look, there is still some concern in the lineup. I'm not going to say it's perfect. There's still those games you look at it and go, how did that happen against the Red Sox? Or how did that happen against this team, that team? But Aaron Judge is hot. He's the best hitter in baseball at the moment. And that is a good thing for the New York Yankees, especially saying they haven't even had their ace until today. Garrett Cole makes his season debut tonight, and I can't wait to watch because I have an off day. I can finally sit down and watch a game in the entirety. And they've survived without him, and they've survived without their other starter in Clark Schmidt the last couple of weeks, who was transferred to the 60-day IL yesterday. And it's guys coming up and plugging in to these, missing areas and still getting the job done. But it feels different than the last couple of years when that has happened, because last couple of years, you fill a guy like, Calhoun in there or Jake Bowers or someone like that, and they have a hot streak and then they just fall off. Right now in this entire season, when one of these guys comes up and when one of these guys gets a start like Cody Poteet or gets to go into the bullpen, they just take it and run with it, and they have not been on these little streaks that end up falling off. They continue to perform, and that's been the difference maker. Is Yankees haven't been at full strength all season. They're not going to be at full strength for a while when you still think about it, even getting Garrett Cole back today with the injuries that have mounted up. A little concerning as of late with how many have started, but that's midseason baseball for you. And it's just so much fun to watch, to see these guys that you think are like, maybe we get a week of a good start out of them, or maybe we get a couple of good games throughout their, 20 that they'll play for the Yankees. Instead, it's consistent overachieving, and it's just helping the Yankees do a lot better than I expected when we left school back on May 3rd.
Well, I was with you. Neither of us were super optimistic that they would be grossly above 500.
I
I think
think
it
if I remember,
suffices to say,
you said 6 games, if I remember.
yeah, it's 27
Six or
games.
8, yeah.
27 games at the time of this recording. The Yankees are above 500, 51-24 on the season. Aaron Judge, who was ice cold, is now one of the hottest hitters in all of baseball. He's got 64 runs driven in, 26 home runs, and a 302 average at the time of this recording. I believe those numbers will probably stand pat for when this is posted, just because he is not currently slated to be in the lineup for Garrett Cole's return game after being hit by a pitch in game 1 of the Orioles game. We'll talk about the O's and the AL East as a whole in just a moment, and about how this could get into a bit of a messy game 2 and game 3 of this series, especially after Judge was plunked. But regardless, talking about the organization as a whole right now, you kind of hit the nail on the head with the depth perspective. The Cody Poteet of the world coming in and filling in, and things not really missing a beat. And I'll even go as far to say, as a whole, I think this is an organizational maturing. I think one of the biggest things you and I have talked about, and obviously we are at the halfway point in the season, and there is time for me to be proven wrong here, as the Yankees did just call up one of their top 15 prospects yesterday. But I think the biggest thing that inspires confidence and instills it in me is that, with the Yankees, when they were plugging in guys last year, you mentioned it was the Jake Bowers, Franchy Cordero, Calhouns, the guys who weren't really I mean, let's put it quite they shouldn't be more than just a bench piece, AAA piece, and they were everyday starters at points in the Yankees lineup a year ago, to the tune of a Yankees team that did not play to their highest capabilities. This year, besides the fact that they've actually been relatively lucky up to this point with health, they've also found ways to slot in guys who have just been productive because they've built depth within the outfield outside of Trent Grisham kind of struggling there for a few weeks. And now 102 feels like a strong point in the season for him with where he was. I think it was at .070 at maybe one point before a few long balls in the Dodgers series. But it's guys like Alex Verdugo who are more consistent. It's the fact that you have three guys in the outfield who can play every day and have pretty much done exactly that in Verdugo, Judge, and Soto. It's the fact that Stanton has honestly performed a lot better this year. Volpe's performed better, and you're getting more consistency out of the guys you expect to be consistent. And then when you do get into those depth pieces, they're not playing a lot because you've been relatively healthy, but when they are playing, they've been pretty solid. Oswaldo Cabrera, who's been a bit of a Swiss Army knife for the Yankees, as expected and has delivered to that promise. Even, Jahmai Jones, Taylor Trammell, John Birdie, when he was healthy, they came in and were serviceable replacements. They weren't anything that's going to light the world on fire, but because the Yankees have been healthy and because they got guys who were just veteran plugins for the time being that were a little bit more focused on contact and a lot less focused on swinging for the fences, a la Bowers, I mean, let's say it, Willie Calhoun, who bangs, and then even Franchi Cordero, who I felt like was just going to bat 202 with a couple long balls. These are more consistent hitters. There's more depth within the team as a whole and within the organization because it trickles down. You look in Scranton right now, and there are legitimate guys who could vie to be starters next year in prospects who are being developed properly. Jorbit Vivas, Caleb Durbin, guys who may not be household names right now, but a year from now could be the Austin Wells of this team, working into a platoon situation in the infield and starting to challenge for reps because they are being developed properly. And then those arms that are being thrown into the rotation or into the pen, well, those are more experienced guys who can work with Matt Blake and use their years as kind of under their belt as experience rather than, even though he was one of the best pitchers last year, throwing Johnny Brito and Randy Vasquez in and kind of corrupting their development by throwing them in maybe a little bit earlier than they needed to be. And it's allowed guys like Clayton Beeter, Will Warren to sit tight in AAA and develop properly. So it's an organizational approach of putting more serviceable veterans in that aren't going to just swing for the fences in the lineup as backups. And then it's allowing everybody else to succeed, the pitchers and the hitters in AAA and AA and so on and so forth that aren't being rushed up to the bigs because everybody and anybody's hurt. Health has been their biggest help this year. And then also depth has been their biggest help because they actually have found more serviceable depth pieces that aren't just home run or nothing guys.
And I think you go to the bullpen and you see that depth especially well, and some of the veteran pieces that have come around, especially under Matt Blake. You think about how Luke Weaver ended last season. He's continued that this year with a 2.68 ERA in 28 games. He's become one of the most heavily used arms. In fact, the second most used arm out of the bullpen for the Yankees. You add in guys like Michael Tonkin, you add in Nick Birdie prior to his injury. These guys that, other organizations passed on, Victor Gonzalez, all these guys that other organizations passed on, but the Yankees took the chance. And we saw them in the offseason as depth pieces. We saw them coming into the year as, hey, you still need to improve upon these guys. These guys are here for, when a 15-day IL stint shows up, but they have proven more than that. And I still think there are pieces to improve going into the trade deadline, which is coming a lot closer or coming a lot quicker than I think I expect as end of July. But it's just a matter of the fact that everyone is performing and doing what they were supposed to do or doing even better, especially where I see that most in the bullpen. Sure, there's some pieces that, like Anthony Rizzo, just couldn't get the bat going again prior to his injury. That type of stuff, it's still happening, but it's where you're getting picked up with guys like Caleb Ferguson. I know he's struggled a little bit as of late, his ERA inflating up to 5.16, but he's another heavily used arm, 29 appearances out of the bullpen this year. It's that type of stuff. These guys who you came into the year not expecting to have big roles. They've carved themselves into big roles, and they're helping the Yankees regain what the Yankees used to be. Sure, I don't think this team is like an '09 team. I don't think this team is like one of the World Series teams, but this is the closest thing we've had it to it in quite some time. This is the closest thing we've had to 2017, which I thought, we all thought low expectations, and then they came out of nowhere. And what was it? It was a bunch of guys exceeding expectations. It was a swagger to that team. You got to remember the Didi Gregoriuses, the Ronald Torreyes, those type of guys. But then you go to this year's team, you've got the swagger piece. You have Marcus Stroman, you have Alex Verdugo, you have those guys, you have Aaron Judge, who's having fun out there, Juan Soto mixed into the mix. And then you have those same guys that in 2017 were overachieving. You have guys that are similar to that again this year. Obviously, not the same names by any means, but it's the same exact story as 2017. The difference was people had higher expectations for this year's Yankee team. Personally, I did not. You know that. You know that very well. We went over that in the beginning of the year that I had them in, I think, either the low 90s or high 80s with wins. This is a team that at this point, you look at the rest of the season, if they don't hit 100 wins, if they don't hit 105 even, it's going to be a disappointment for the regular season standards. You have to lock up home field advantage going throughout the playoffs at this point. And it's crazy. Not even halfway through, we're talking about that. But that's how good this Yankee team has been. And it's because they have regained the form that recipe that used to have them success. They found it again and they're using it. They don't just see it. It's not like that recipe book that you have in the corner of your kitchen that's there for really just the looks and you never pick it up. I mean, we had 3 of them at my apartment this past year. We never opened up the recipe books. The Yankees are not only seeing the recipe books, but they have opened it again and they have built a team ready to win here in 2024.
And I think that's what you and I have just kind of encompassed here. It's that they've built a team with more depth, quality depth, and they've kind of gotten lucky in the sense that the guys they've got. I mean, I'm sure that Brian Cashman expected Ronald Torreyes to be a good piece to the team, a good depth piece, maybe at worst, a solid starter in AAA. But Torreyes became a legitimate part of the infield and part crazy run that year. Now, the trade-off in that is I'm sure he didn't expect John Birdie to end up being a huge key component before he went down, or Taylor Trammell and Jahmai Jones to play pretty well given the sample size they were given, or for Austin Wells and Jose Trevino to end up kind of working really well as a platoon this year. I'm sure that the expectations were maybe a little lower for this crew in terms of the depth guys, or for us who has really taken a step up as a whole this year, those expectations were probably a little lower, but they've exceeded them. And in the bullpen, they've done it tenfold. Luke Weaver, as you mentioned, Dream Weaver has been terrific. And then even Tonkin and those guys throughout who have just been able to provide really valuable innings and do so at a high clip. Now, I do think there's a lot to be improved on in the bullpen, and there is in the lineup, certainly. So let's kind of get into that before we round out with some more good to close things out. The pen has weak spots, but maybe the weakest spot on this entire Yankees team right now is the infield. Anthony Rizzo is hurt. He's going to likely be out for a month and a half, 2 months. So Ben Rice has gotten the call up. Still a small sample size there of 1 game at the time of this recording to really evaluate what the Yankees will have there for this long haul. Gleyber Torres has just not been great this year defensively. A lot of miscues, a lot of bad plays, and then a 221 average, which is a far cry from his being the most productive bat at this time a year ago. You look at shortstop, and Anthony Volpe is really the only sure thing you have in the infield right now, which is surprising because going into the season, you likely never would have projected that. And then at third base, in all honesty, Oswaldo Cabrera should be playing every day over DJ LeMahieu because LeMahieu has really not found his rhythm coming back from injury. So I kind of tee this up to you. How do the Yankees solve their infield problem? Because I'm not even sure Aaron Boone or Brian Cashman know how, because it's a lot of, wow, we didn't expect this to happen. On the contrary to the guys who've overperformed expectations, 3 of their key guys have grossly underperformed.
Yeah, I mean, the simplest way is at the trade deadline, you have to attack. And the unfortunate part is you don't have that many high quality pieces down in the minors to go and attack the trade deadline, depending on who you're ready to give up and who you're not ready to give up. Obviously, you look at Jason Dominguez. I think he's untouchable. I don't think the Yankees go near him because Verdugo's a free agent at the end of the year. Stanton, I don't know how much longer realistically he has on this team. I know his contract is long, but you have to think bigger picture. Obviously, he's playing himself into a role for next year. He's played very well this year. He's going to be on the team through this trade deadline. Not sure past that unless he keeps this production going. But Jason Dominguez is untouchable. But what about a guy like Spencer Jones? He's struggled this year in the minors. Are you now more willing to go and trade Spencer Jones to find that first piece or first base piece, or maybe that second baseman, maybe that actual staple at third base, since the Yankees seem to not want to give it to Oswaldo, but don't also want to give it to DJ? And really, neither of them. Oswaldo has improved upon last year, but his numbers from his hot start have also cooled off. So he's just about average at this point. So maybe do you use Spencer Jones or one of those guys? Obviously, Oswald Peraza going to be the biggest trade piece I'd have to imagine that the Yankees are going to throw out there. But at this point, why don't you give him a try? Because it's the same thing as year in and year out. It's Gleyber Torres is struggling. You have this Peraza in the minor leagues, and I'm pretty sure he's still healthy, if I'm not mistaken. I don't believe he's one of the guys injured down there right now. I know Dominguez is on the 7-day, but I think Peraza is still healthy, and I don't know what his numbers look like right now. I'm going to try to pull him up here real quick, but at the end of the day, a top prospect, a guy that's been highly touted throughout his time in the Yankees organization, to me, and you know this, Dylan, I have always defended him, and well, I'm going to give him now. I look at his numbers this year and I could see why the Yankees aren't going to him. A 165 batting average through 115 at bats, 4 home runs, and 12 runs batted in. But he's a guy that they're going to try to, trade off. I think they've diminished his confidence at this point because it was that constant. He's up for a couple of games, but he's not going to play. Now he's back to AAA. He starts to get going in AAA. We bring him up, only play a couple of games, and then right back down. And it was that same story over and over again. So you got Peraza to use. You've got some of the pitchers. I don't know how many you want to go to, but you have to find a way to improve the infield. Don't touch the outfield. I understand you might be looking for a role for Jason Dominguez to slot into, but I don't think you really have to go out and try to move Alex Verdugo. I think Verdugo has his role on this team. Obviously, Aaron Judge has his role on this team. Obviously, Juan Soto has his role on this team. But I still think there's a route for Dominguez to coexist with all these guys in the outfield and with Stanton at DH. I think second half of the season, probably more of a platoon with Soto, who's been banged up recently, with Judge, who just got hit in the hand. I think DH becomes more of a platoon. And what does that allow? It allows Dominguez to find himself back on the major league roster. Sure. Does it decrease the at-bats of Giancarlo Stanton? Yes. But you have to think about what's best for this team in the long run, and that's keeping Judge and Soto healthy. Especially, you want to keep Soto healthy because you also want to pay him, or the fans want him to be paid in the offseason. You don't want to go into the offseason with a hurt Soto and then trying to use that against him in contract negotiations because there's a team across town ready to pay him. The Mets are going to come in hot. I know they're on a little bit of a resurgence since Grimace showed up at their game the other day, and they've won, I think it's 6 or 7 straight at this point, which is
7
crazy.
straight and 12, I think 11 or 12 of their last 15.
They're hot, and Cohen's going to open up his paycheck or his checkbook in the offseason ready for Soto. So you want to keep him healthy, have him keep producing, and of course, you also want to hand him the check at the end of the year to keep him with the Yankees. But there's still a chance for Dominguez. So I think when you go back to what happens at the deadline, don't touch any of the outfield. Don't touch the 3 guys consistently playing in the outfield. Don't touch Stanton. Don't touch Jason Dominguez. I think Dominguez finds his way to the majors as long as he stays healthy. Not exactly sure what's going on down there in AAA. I thought we were supposed to get an update. I never saw it. I don't know if you saw it. I've just been busy. I never actually saw if Dominguez's update came out, but it comes to the infield. You have to find something. There's a ton of pieces out there for the Yankees to go out and get. There's so many teams that have good third basemen that just aren't going to, make the playoffs or really contend. I'd love, I'm looking up an article right now and looking at some of the potential guys the Yankees can go after. You got Yandy Diaz. I doubt Tampa wants to do that. He plays first base, carries a 259 batting average to this point of the year. I don't think Tampa would trade him in the division. but he's got more money than Tampa usually locks up in a contract. So maybe they do. Josh Bell's still out there. Pete Alonso's an interesting one. I'm just listing off some that I see in this article. Pete Alonso would be a fun get. I don't think Steve Cohen does it on the other side of town. But right now, it seems like Pete Alonso is not coming back to the New York Mets. So they might shop him at the deadline. And it comes down to, do the Yankees want to be aggressive? I'm not really sure, but the Yankees got to go out and get something.
I agree. I think that they need just something to shore up the infield, another piece. I would say that I don't want Pete Alonso. I don't at all. I think this is a team that has come such a long way from being a long ball or nothing team this year with the quality ABs that you get out of Juan Soto, Alex Verdugo, Volpe taking the step up this year, and Jose Trevino also being a quiet, really, really key component of this lineup. So I would say that you don't really go out and get a huge all or nothing addition like Alonso,
I
but
mean,
a
I
guy
agree.
that
I just was naming it,
oh, I know,
just
but
putting it out there.
I like some of the other guys you mentioned there, maybe a Yandy if they were going to do something like that. But I think the guy for me has been Ryan McMahon. I know he's been floated a lot by Jeff Passan. It's been all over ESPN, and there's been already ties to the New York Yankees. To me, it makes the most sense for two reasons. One, why not get another lefty? Because it's at this point, it's worked with Soto and it's worked with Verdugo. Let's not mess up a good thing. And then the next thing I would say here is that this isn't a guy who's a long ball or nothing guy. This is a 268 average who would immediately come in and be one of your most reliable hitters. I say you could slot him in the 6 hole, 7, maybe up to 2, 1 sometimes, whatever you need to. And it's a Rockies team that's lost 4 of their last 5. That is really not great this year. Doesn't look like they're going to light the world on fire by any stretch of the word. 25 and 48. I think Ryan McMahon would be ripe for the taking. And I think an Oswald Peraza package of a pitcher prospect or two probably gets it done. I don't think it takes a crazy, crazy deal in a market where everyday players are very, very hard to come by. Yeah, he might be. You might see the Rockies get overpaid for it, but I think it's kind of that situation where if you're not going to go in-house with Peraza, if you're not going to go in-house with Durbin, Vivas, somebody like that, then why not go out? If this is your all or nothing year, go add a Ryan McMahon. Go add a more consistent everyday player. The Pete Alonso types, stay away from, because this is a team that is a lot more consistent this year at the dish, a lot more disciplined at the dish, and getting a guy who really fits more the mold of the Jake Bauers, Franchi Cordero all or nothing kind of edition, I don't really love. But I think that you and I are in agreement. They need to get another infielder, another guy who can be an everyday player, another guy to take a little bit of the pressure off Rizzo, LeMahieu, and Torres, because I highly doubt you're flipping Torres at the deadline because even though he's not performed great, Boone is still committed to him. Rizzo, the best case scenario, truthfully, here is he gets fully healthy in these 8 weeks and then maybe comes back as a end of July, early August edition to kind of reinvigorate the lineup and take pressure off. And you also hope Ben Rice, in the meantime, locks up the first base job, and you have to answer some really tough questions about Anthony Rizzo. And then over at third base, maybe Oswaldo Cabrera takes it, LeMahieu takes it, whatever it may be. But you hope it all works itself out. And then if you can't get Waldo or LeMahieu to take it in the meantime, well, then there comes Ryan McMahon to solidify the infield as best as possible. It's hard to probably come by. Hal's probably not going to love it, especially because it means that you got to figure out why you have this big number in LeMahieu and Rizzo on the books and they're just not doing anything. But I think it's a little easier to explain if you're hoisting 28 at the end of the year, and Ryan McMahon was a catalyst in doing so. Another position slash area of, maybe we shore up if you're in the Yankees fan base right now and the media has hit it to a T, it's the bullpen. As great of a job as Matt Blake has done, and as great of a job as Tonkin and Weaver and all those guys have done this year, you still need the guys who can light the stadium on fire when they come in and close things out. We are far removed from a Yankees team that was stacking relievers in the back end of the pen. Theo Aroldis Chapman, Andrew Miller, Zach Britton years, when these were guys who would come in and you'd go, well, 7's good, 8's good, and 9's good. Basically, you just need the starter to get 6 innings because those 3 guys at the end, you're good. Now, you have a guy with an entrance who, although I love White Horse by Chris Stapleton, might be one of the most lame closer entrances in baseball history in Clay Holmes, and they call him Cardiac Clay for a reason. Clay Holmes would be a great setup man. But for a team that wants to win a 28th World Series, I don't think Clay Holmes should be your closer. So whether it's getting a guy who can rotate in with him at closer or be a true setup man, a 1-2 punch, or move Clay to setup man and get a true closer, I think they got to make an addition to the pen and maybe more than just one, maybe another guy you can throw in there as well. Is there anybody you're looking at, or do you think I'm far fetched here and that they should just keep relying on the Matt Blake pitching clinic to come through?
No, I'm exactly with you. But before I go to the bullpen, going back on your Ryan McMahon point, I love that one for the Yankees. I think it's a good addition. Of course, the article I happened to pull up just didn't have him listed, so I didn't get a chance to list him. But as you said his name, I was typing it in because that was my next man that I was going to mention. He'd be a good fit. He could play third, he could play first, a little versatility there. I think the Yankees also still need to find. I don't know if they want to target the corners or that middle infield spot in Torres. I have a feeling it'll be one of the corners, and I think McMahon really fits it. And Jeff Passan, you tend to listen when he speaks. He's not Jack Curry when it comes to the New York Yankees, but Jeff Passan knows a thing or two about, putting those ideas out to the world. Now, going back to other trade targets, there's a team out in Oakland who, well, they overperformed probably at the beginning of the season, but have started to go right back down to where you'd expect the Oakland A's to be. And they have the guy by the name of Mason Miller, 25-year-old right-hander in the bullpen. He's a guy that a lot of teams are going to be interested in. I'm not sure Oakland is shopping him, but Oakland should be shopping everyone at this point because there's nothing good going for that organization, really. And that's putting it nicely, I think, or bluntly. I don't know. But either way, every single year they end up, giving away that top guy on their team that's starting to get going. And this year, that's Mason Miller in 26 games, a 2.20 ERA, 13 saves, 32 and 2/3. He has 57 strikeouts and an whip under one. In fact, a whip of .83. And I think that's a guy that would thrive with Matt Blake as his pitching coach. He's thriving right now out in Oakland. And you bring him into Matt Blake, you bring him into possibly, I think, take the closer role from Clay. But I think, honestly, the Yankees would rather Mason Miller set up Clay Holmes, whatever they want to do. That's a lethal 8-9 threat right there in the bullpen. I still think one's not enough, though. And I've said this all season. You have to go out, maybe get a Dylan Floro, an Austin Adams, someone like that out in the bullpen. Even Tanner Scott, I know he's more of a closer, but you can convert him back to being a regular reliever. There's guys available. I think you need 2 relief arms and an infielder for this trade deadline to really feel successful. And that's just as of now. You never know what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Ideally, and I know the Yankees, it would be a lot of spending, but 2 infielders and 2 relief pitchers would set them up to go to championship number 28 without fail.
Now, I completely agree with you, and I think that's ideally what they do, but it's a Yankees team at the deadline that has not been the Yankees of old. They've been content with a Kenyon Middleton and just, okay, well, we've got the guys getting healthy, but right now this team does feel different. This does feel like a different attitude. This does feel like a different year, and I agree that they need that lockdown reliever, as I mentioned, but I don't know if they're going to be willing to pay for Mason Miller. I don't think it's a matter of if the A's are going to shop him. I think the A's have clearly shown that if anybody calls with the right price, and even if it's just a couple B-list prospects, the A's will probably take them up on it because they're the Oakland A's, soon to be the Vegas A's. But in the meantime, I think Tanner Scott might be the perfect kind of addition for this team. It was alluded to on Talking Yanks that got a smirk out of Aaron Boone. And then I also would like to say that I think if there are 2 teams the Yankees like to deal with at the deadline, the A's and Marlins are 2 of them, but I think they're not going to want to overpay for a package that includes Mason Miller. And if they're going to go out and get a Ryan McMahon or a solid corner infielder, then I think you probably go with a Tanner Scott, who's still really, really good with an ERA under 2 and a whip just above 1, but won't cost you a king's ransom like Mason Miller might. So I think that that would be the ideal 2 additions for me would be a Tanner Scott, Ryan McMahon, and then another bullpen arm. Insert a guy with a just above a 3 ERA on some team that's below 500, and the Yankees will probably sweep him up. Or maybe just over 3 like Kenyon Middleton. So,
Yeah,
or just below 4.
and I think realistically that's the way to go. I'm just putting out, if you're, we talked about it earlier. They've kind of reopened that recipe book that says, get that swagger along with those guys that can get going. that 2017 that I like to keep referencing, the 2009 team, obviously they paid big in free agency. You can kind of equate that to this past offseason as well. It wasn't quite free agency, but you went out, made some big trades for Verdugo, for obviously the big name in Juan Soto. But I think the big thing for the Yankees when it comes to the reliever is it's not necessarily about replacing anyone you currently have in that bullpen. It's really just finding guys to add on to it. Because I was about to say Tanner Scott could replace Caleb Ferguson because Ferguson's now has a 5.16 ERA in 29 appearances. But realistically, Ferguson's got his role in that bullpen. It's just a matter of some of those rotation pieces or rotating pieces is what I should say in the bullpen that, have keep coming up, keep coming down. Saw a couple get called up yesterday because of injuries, one sent right back down. But it's a matter of, if you're the Yankees, find guys to add on. Don't necessarily subtract from that bullpen, but find an arm or two that can help you make that bullpen completely untouchable, because at times it's looked at this year, but there's also times they, have a guy come out of the bullpen and it's like, probably not the best here. So I say two relievers, probably not Mason Miller, but Tanner Scott would be phenomenal lefty thrower.
And Mason Miller would be this is the Yankees move. Tanner Scott and Ryan McMahon would certainly be a great one, but Tanner Scott and Ryan McMahon are okay, they're going for it. Mason Miller is this is the Yankees of old, chips into the table, guns a-blazing, they want 28. It's just a matter of what Hal's comfortable with parting with, and it's just a matter of what you can see really making that big of a difference, because I don't think they're very far away at all from being the best team in baseball by a wide margin. Right now, it's them and the Phillies, and the O's are hot on their coattails, and we'll see what happens after this series. But it's a team that's still struggling to beat AL East teams, and with a stretch that's almost 20 games coming up that's going to be against the AL East, you need the guys who are going to just take you that next notch up the tier of over the O's in postseason play. Because right now, as confident as I am with the Yankees, I don't see them beating the Phillies or the Orioles in postseason play. I don't see them beating the Dodgers in postseason play, because that bullpen, as great as it is in terms of what Matt Blake has done with guys who you would never expect to be true contributors into that bullpen, you need those guys. Those guys that when you see them come in, you go, okay, we might not be able to buy a hit. Mason Miller instills that fear. Tanner Scott does to some semblance, but Mason Miller comes in and there's your closer. There's your lockdown guy. There's the guy who gets the final out to get 28. We'll see what the Yankees do. There's ample time before the trade deadline, but it's clear we're in agreement. It's just a matter of who, not a matter of if the Yankees should make a big deadline addition. So it has been a couple months as we kind of get to the tail end of this episode here. It has been a couple months since we talked Yankee baseball. A lot of guys have emerged. A lot of guys have performed to what we expected, and some to never what we could have expected. I want your best pitcher and best Yankee hitter right now.
Hello?
Oh, no. Oh, you're back. You're back.
Oh, we're back. Okay. Some technical difficulties in day one here. It happens. That can be cut out. So my top hitter for the New York Yankees, I mean, it's easy. It's Aaron Judge. I did the math, a 391 batting average since we left on May 3rd to go along with 20 of his home runs. Aaron Judge isn't the best hitter on the Yankees. He is the best hitter, hands down, in baseball right now. And he is the MVP of the American League. And I'll say that confidently. If he keeps doing what he's doing, there is nobody that can come close to what Aaron Judge's impact on the New York Yankees has been. And I know they have Juan Soto this year, and my argument for the MVP award is normally, who helps their team the most, because that's really what most valuable player means. It doesn't necessarily mean the best, but Judge has not only been the best player, but he's been one of the most valuable players for the New York Yankees. Obviously, good that the testing came back when he got hit in the hand last night. hoping that it's nothing serious. He said he'd be back in the lineup tonight. He is not back in the lineup tonight, but I have a feeling that's more precautionary. I hope it's more precautionary than anything else. You asked me for my best Yankee pitcher too, and I'm going to go a different route. Obviously, there's a name that I want to say, but I'm going to leave it to you because I think you're going to want to say the name I was thinking. But I'm actually going to go Carlos Rodon this year. And yes, stats wise, he's not the best pitcher. Again, I just wanted to go a different direction because I think I know who you might be thinking, and no fun in that. Carlos Rodon has been the best Yankees pitcher because after last season, it looked like his career in New York was on a Sonny Gray type, track in which it was going to be a quick stint. It was not going to be a stint fans wanted to remember. But in 15 starts this year, Carlos Rodon is 9-3. He's 3.28 ERA, 85 innings, 71 hits, 32 runs, just 31 of them earned. He has allowed 11 home runs, a little much up there, but 81 strikeouts to 23 walks for Rodon this season. His wife, Ashley, I believe is her name, also a really fun Twitter user to go along with it. And Carlos Rodon is he's beaten his expectations so much. I talked about last year briefly, but that ERA of, oh no, my page went away. 6.85, there it is. His ERA of 6.85, 145 whip. And there was that start in Anaheim where Yankee fans and him were going at it. And it was like, this isn't good. He does not fit the New York Yankees, but he does. And what it was back then, he was just pissed at himself for not pitching well. And now that he's pitching well, he said it himself. He finally feels like he has a home here in New York. He finally feels like he belongs with the Yankees. And it's been huge because, like we talked about earlier, Garrett Cole hasn't pitched until tonight. And it's been a rotation that I think you and I were both scared about because there's Rodon and there's Cortez, who's another arm that's also really improved from last season. Then there's, Clark Schmidt, Luis Gil. What are we getting there? And obviously, I think one of those guys is going to be the guy that you're talking about. And I think just in general, what they have been able to do as a rotation as full is fun, but you got to give it up to Carlos Rodon because you knew what we were getting Marcus Stroman. You and I talked about it. He's going to go out there every fifth day. He's going to compete. He's going to have an ERA right around 3. You knew after that, nothing. Let's be real here. There was no expectations with the Final Four, at least between me and you. There was no high expectations for the Final Four here in New York in the starting rotation, and they've been so good, and I think it starts with the improvement of Carlos Rodon.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and thank you first. I think you left me a really clear-cut choice for pitcher, the best pitcher on the staff right now, and I think that's Dennis Santana. I think he's really provided some valuable innings for Matt Blake's bullpen and has done a great job. He has a 7.5 ERA. You think I was going with him, Justin?
He's got a
It's Luis Gil.
6.26. He's got a 6.26. If you're going to put him out there, at least get his stat right.
626. Sorry, it has actually shrunk from a 7.5 the last time I looked at it. Hey, Trevino's got an 18 flat, so he's got the second highest mark right now to Clayton Andrews, who's out in Scranton Wilkes-Barre, but has been riding the Scranton shuttle, so he might be back up with the Yanks by the time of this recording, or by the time you are watching or listening to this. It's Luis Gil, guys. He's the king of the heel, as Yes has made the pun about 1,000 times at this point. 2.03 ERA. That's the best mark on the team. 96 strikeouts. That's the best mark on the team. He is not just a certainty at this point to go out there and provide you a good start. He's a certainty to provide you the best start you may see in baseball this week. Luis Gil has become the best pitcher in this rotation. Garrett Cole's back. That's great. But Luis Gil might have to be even once he settles in because Luis Gil has been one of the best arms in all of baseball. He's tied for third with 9 wins. He's also tied with Carlos Rodon in that tie. He's tied for third in ERA. He's tied for 11th in strikeouts, and he is tied for 11th with a .98 whip. He has been phenomenal also at home with a 1.58 ERA there, which is obviously super important. And he has been a absolute revelation for this team. Nobody would have imagined he'd be this good. I know you've always been a Luis Gil fan. You really, really campaigned for him to get into this rotation, but he has delivered beyond anybody's wildest dreams and has been a wonderful, wonderful addition to the rotation. Now, the bat I'm going to use here, you didn't leave me as easy pickings, but I think it's still a pretty good one. As I try to get this, there's a glare on my facial hair right now. We'll talk at the end also about the facial hair feature. It's, oh my goodness. We're probably not going to use Zoom the next time you visually see us, but if you're listening to us on audio, just to depict it for you, there's a like white light glare right on my beard. But regardless, yeah. It's Juan Soto. I'm going to go with Soto to be a differentiator here. I mean, Judge has been on a tear since you and I last talked about him and said maybe he should get a Phantom IL stint, but Soto has been the most welcome addition to this team as well. A complete second pulse in the lineup beyond Aaron Judge. It's felt like at times that Aaron Judge is just playing baseball on his own in past years, especially with this lineup when Stanton would struggle or Rizzo or someone else would struggle and the Joey Gallo experiment would fail. It felt like they've just been looking for that counterpart to him. And Juan Soto has been that and then some. 313 average, 82 hits, has been fantastic. A sneaky 18 home runs, too, that I feel like doesn't get enough credit. I know he always has a huge home run, but he has more homers than Stanton, who's also been strong, and 55 runs driven in. Soto has been a perfect 1B to Judge's 1A. Yes, he is not going to be the face of the team for this New York Yankees. That will be the captain, Aaron Judge, but he is still going to be a huge catalyst in their success as he has been and as he will be. And I will say, if they do get as far as we hope they do, and we think they could, I think last game of the season, last regular season game of the season, if you've got home field advantage locked up, Al, come on. Let's go for the pomp and circumstance that we used to have with the Rogers in George's box. Let's go for the pomp and circumstance. You know we can't get an episode without referencing that. Let's go for the pomp and circumstance. Let's get the big check too. And let's hand it to Juan Soto at the start of the last regular season home game and announce that he has signed a 10-year deal to be a New York Yankee. I don't care what it costs. I'll pay Uncle Steve. He's going to give him a bag from across town. So whatever it takes, get Juan Soto because he has been the perfect 1B to it's Batman and Batman. It's not Batman and Robin. It's Batman and Batman. You got the 1A, you got the 1B. They're both really darn good. They're both competing for MVP. They're both going to be all-stars. Al just needs to lock him up. But for now, the focus is on the chase for 28, and there's no chase for 28 without Luis Gil, Juan Soto, Carlos Rodon, and Aaron Judge, amongst others. We could have named Anthony Volpe. We could have named Giancarlo Stanton. We could have named Marcus Stroman. We could have named so on and so forth throughout the course of this team. They have grossly overperformed where you and I both expected them to be. 27 games above 500, and we will be with you to talk about it throughout the course of this summer in some way, shape, or form, whether it's every week, every 2 weeks, with great lighting or poor lighting. We will try to provide you Bomber Boys throughout the summer. Justin, I can't go. I mean, for those watching this without mentioning, the mustache has gotten to a thick point. It is something right now, buddy.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's thick, dude.
Yeah, it has gotten a lot thicker than I thought I'd ever let it get to. It was hey, I'm going to just randomly grow this out for a week or two and see what happens after I experimented with Dylan's goatee. It fit for a little bit, but I don't rock it like Dylan does. So I was like, I'm going to go back to the mustache, go back to my high school days, that senior year. But now it's just gotten this, and it's like, I don't know if I can trust, just getting rid of it. I don't think I'll look the same at this point. Like, it's become a staple. I think I've had it now since what, February or March? And it's like, I think
It's
March. I think March is when I first brought it back right after our trip to Myrtle Beach. And I was just like,
yes.
you know what? Yeah. And now it's just like we have country night this Saturday for the Sanford Mainers, and I can roll up the edges of my like the ends of the mustache, and I think it'll really fit country night. And then I'm wondering, do I let it go? And the next time you see me here on Bomber Boys, there's a chance it's not around anymore. I bring the aviators out. I've got the players saying I look like I'm straight out of Top Gun. I've got other people saying that too. I personally love the look. Not sure everyone's a fan of it. I know my mom is most definitely not a fan of the mustache.
I'm thinking maybe if you go no mustache, I get rid of the goatee and just go straight stash for a little bit, which I have never done. I've never
So
done
I have to
straight
get
stash.
rid of mine to have you get yours.
Yes, that's the trade I'll make you to do stash for a little bit. I haven't done it. I'm imagining it would look like it would be a look. So, and I also want to mention for those of you watching on Zoom, there is this effect that shows my beard in almost like 3D on my hand that is on. I don't know how to turn it off. I don't know how to fix it, but it is this weird effect that Zoom has, and it's not just the lighting that's also been glaring in my face. I trying to figure out how to get on Zoom on my laptop and do this. I'm not great with lighting even in any setting. So this is just my best experiment. It was great at first, but now the sun's starting to set and it's glaring in my eye, and I probably should have shut the blinds. But if you're watching, thank you for hanging with us because the quality has been an adventure to say the least on both of our ends. But hey, whether you're watching on Zoom next time or we use StreamYard or something else, or whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to podcasts, thanks for joining us for this iteration of Bomber Boys over the course of the summer. Justin, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Let's go Yankees. Keep it up.
Let's go Yankees, let's go Mainers, and let's go Tom Sox. From Justin Chevalella, I'm Dylan Price, signing off and saying thank you for hanging with us on this iteration of Bomber Boys, wherever you are, wherever you may be. Thanks for hanging with us. Go Yanks.